As some of the world looks to get back into the swing of things, employers are eager to get their workers back on their feet, but in a different way than before the COVID-19 pandemic. Joining us to discuss is One Huddle founder and CEO Sam Kiyuchi. Sam, good to see you again here. I definitely want to talk about the return to work, but going on your platform and looking around, you do diversity and inclusion training. What are you hearing from your clients right now on what do they need from that part of your platform at this moment?
Thanks for having me. I think the topic of diversity and inclusion training has always been an important one. It's become more important, obviously, in the last few weeks. But the biggest challenge that we've seen since COVID-19 happened is the shift from working at an office to working remote means that a large majority of the U.S. workforce doesn't have access to technology in order to develop and upskill. That includes diversity and inclusion training. 40% of the U.S. workforce is frontline, low income. They don't have a desktop tablet at home to consume traditional e-learning. We've all been through the kind of click through the module stuff. And, so what we're seeing is a very heightened demand from companies to invest in infrastructure so that their important content like diversity and inclusion can meet employees wherever they may be.
Sam, let's get to what the workplace is looking like right now. What are you seeing as employees start to return to the office? What are your clients telling you about how things have changed and are going to continue to change?
Yeah, the future of work is no longer in the future. The future of work is here and it's now. So we're seeing a lot of companies start to think about not just, back in 2019 and before, we thought about job training and closing skill gaps. Today, we're talking about closing this disconnection that occurs today. Employees want to go to work where they're excited, they're motivated, they're connected. And one of the things I've learned since the last few months with COVID is companies have started to realize that it's equally important to train and skill people up as it is to keep people together. And, the Zoom conference calls and the Zoom happy hours, they worked for a few weeks, everybody might agree. But once we got away from that, people started to think about how do we keep people excited and connected. I see heightened demand from leading brands to think about this concept of connection more urgently.
Sam, how underskilled is the U.S. workforce? Listen, a lot of folks never used Zoom 4 months ago.
Sure. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that the workforce is underskilled necessarily. I think the reality is we have more content at our fingertips than ever. But because we haven't invested or companies have looked at job training as a, quote, nice to have, not a need to have. Well, now it's a need to have. And when I tell you for several years, at One Huddle, our focus is making job training accessible. And I had companies tell me, the challenge is, this is always the last thing to purchase. Job training is always the last thing to invest in. But now more than ever, it's become urgent for companies to lean into technology to keep their people connected.
What about the cost of keeping people connected? What about the cost of bringing the future of work into the present right now for these companies?
Sure. I mean, I think that it's no different than the way companies think about how they meet their customer. So if you think about companies every day, think about, we work with a large number of retail and restaurant brands. They're always thinking about how we meet the customer where they are with consumer first products, mobile applications. It's time that we start to think about meeting our employees and treating them the same way we treat customers. So, I don't think it costs that much. I think we have companies who have infrastructure in place. They have to get, again, I use the example of the watch the module, take the quiz stuff. It's crazy that in 2020, we're still using e-learning stuff that nobody really wants to do and people want to click through. So finding ways to make communication and job training not just more engaging, but more effective starts with using the technology that we all have already at our fingertips.
Sam, I do want to ask you about your business. How is your business holding up? To your point, you work with hotels, you work with retailers, but I also know you did raise a good sum of money, $30 million in January. You're looking at another capital raise. What's your business looking at today?
Sure. So our business has surged in the last 90 days. I think that any product that's used to meet employees remotely has seen an uptick. So we've seen a 13x increase in gameplay across the board on our platform. We've also seen companies, you mentioned hospitality, retail, restaurants, some of the leading brands we work with, when COVID started to happen and they had to make layoffs, they made really tough decisions around how do we keep our people together. So we saw a lot of companies say, even though we're not able to keep the same hours, even though we might have to make tough decisions about payroll, we're going to invest in tech to keep people work ready. And as we're seeing right now, the companies that you're talking about that are restarting and winning, Cedar Fair, some certain retail brands, these are brands who were investing in their infrastructure this whole time so that when they restart, their people don't skip a beat. So that's been a promising sign for us.
All right, let's leave it there. One Huddle founder and CEO Sam Cauchi, good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.